Welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul Dirienza. Got a great show in store for you. My guest returning, Philip Van Aver. Welcome, Philip.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here again.
Right. Philip has been here a few times. We've talked about a variety of subjects, but I think what we're going to talk about tonight is Lower East Side politics, Sheldon Silver. So if you're like a Manhattan resident, you're a maven of community politics, you live in the East Village, want to know what's going on, I tell you, between the two of us, you got a lot of the information. With this guy, you really got it. He knows what's going on. He knows. I'm sorry to say.
Well,
know where the bodies are buried.
Well, some of the bodies. When we say the Lower East Side, we're talking about the area below 14th Street. Mm-hmm. And both Paul and I live near Tompkins Square Park, and then we're also going to talk below Houston Street, which is like the area where we live is sometimes referred to as the East Village, but right. I don't call it the East Village. I expect to get some emails or tweets right. about that. Exactly. But anyway, we're going to talk about some of the history, some mm-hmm. of the continuing issues, right? And as most of you probably know, the longtime assemblyman from this is the district below Houston Street, mm-hmm. from the Lower East Side, Sheldon Silver, was convicted on a variety of corruption charges, and I mm-hmm. won't go into detail about what they were. It hasn't been, it's not over till it's over.
Mm-hmm. And it is an appeal, and he's been convicted.
It's an appeal, but those of us who, like myself, were involved in political work for many years. Yeah. We're not unaware that mm-hmm. there was an aura of corruption.
Well, how do you define?
Let me in the Grand Street, in the kind of Grand Street universe. That's what this is called, the Grand Street. Now, I've been a member of the community board, and so I knew many of these people. Now, I want to make. Sometimes one wonders or speculated why there's so much corruption in New York's politics. The reason is that, and I can speak personally on this, you won't get anywhere in New York City politics unless you turn a blind eye to a lot of things that are going on. You don't talk about them, you just look the other way. And people like myself knew things that were going on mm-hmm. with the speaker, or before he was the speaker, but we knew enough not to talk about them. And the things were not on the level of which Sheldon Silver was convicted for, but they involved payoffs with giving someone an apartment is a payoff. And what's interesting is I was a member of what's called the county committee for many years, and the county committee is an elected position. Mm-hmm. Now, the New York Times and WNYC says it's for political hacks, which I don't consider myself a political hack. You have to go out, get petitions from your neighbors. Mm-hmm. You only need 20 valid signatures from your ED in order to be elected, but it does involve a process. Mm-hmm. And twice I've been, over the years I was on the county committee, I was asked to participate in the process of choosing someone. And as far as I could tell, the process was above board, at least in the area where I lived.
What does a county committee do?
The county committee is made up of members from each, I believe 2 members, male and female, from each election district. And in an area like for Assemblyman Silver, that's a large area for an assemblyman. So you have many people on. I think when I voted in 2006, there were something like 370 county committeemen for the area that was covered by Steve Sanders' district, you see. Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of people. But the point is that when the county committee met mm-hmm. to choose a replacement for Sheldon Silver.
Where would they meet?
They met at the Educational Alliance.
In a large 370
which
people?
Is a large auditorium.
Yeah.
And because it was the day before Chinese New Year, many of the Chinese members of the committee were not able to attend. That was in the East Villager, which is the Villager and the East Villager, which is our local newspapers, covered this very well. What happened, interestingly enough, it was weighted in such a way that those committee members who were from districts that had voted for Mario Cuomo in the last election, rather than his opponent from the Green Party, or his opponent for the nomination, the Cuomo stalwarts were allowed a weighted vote. So it ended up that
What's a weighted
vote? For instance, if it's an unweighted vote, you just have one man, one woman, one vote. But the people who were from these districts that voted for it, it was devised in such a way that some of them had 20 votes. You see, so it on the face of it, it doesn't seem very democratic. Anyway, they ended up choosing a woman who had been a district leader for many years, whom I never heard of, though I tend to read the press about local issues. And this person belongs to the Harry S. Truman Democratic Club on East Broadway, which is the club basically created by Sheldon Silver. So at this stage of the game, they're trying to recreate Sheldon Silver in another form.
Oh, I see.
And I won't mention that this woman's name is Alice Garcelle. I'm sure she's a very nice lady. She's married to a district leader who's been very active in this. So we seem to be getting a repetition of what we had in the past. And there, of course, there will be a general election. The area is
and this is to fill the seat of Shelley Silver, who was forced to resign since he was convicted of multiple felonies.
Until there is an election in the fall. And anyway, or the primary election, excuse me. But it's just interesting to see how through these variety of machinations, it ended up as somebody who's basically a protege of that political club was elected when there was a wide spectrum of other voters. Now, Paul and I are from the area, live in the area above Houston Street, which was represented by Councilmember Friedlander for many years, and then by Councilmember Margarita Lopez, and currently by Councilmember Rosie Mendez.
You just jumped over Antonio Pagan. He doesn't. Is he like sort of like a forgotten?
Well, I do. Well, I just want to talk about the honorable tradition. We're going to leave Shelley Silver. We're going to leave Antonio Pagan out there with Shelley Silver, because Shelley supported Antonio Pagan. But anyway, this district where Paul and I live has a very progressive history. For instance, we were talking earlier before the show about Ruth Messinger. She ran against Giuliani, and our district was one of the few that actually voted for Ruth Messinger. And so it does have a very progressive history, but the East Village, I'll use the term in this case, is changing a great deal, has had a lot of changes in recent years.
Thanks to the Trump family.
Yeah, and the general, the rezone, and just the fact that it's a desirable area to live in. It's convenient, it has good services, more or less, but we don't really, it's very hard to say what the political future of our neighborhood is. As I said,
it depends on who's moving into these.
And
Tony, new apartments are
and
building.
Who actually registers to vote, which is like a major, especially in off-year elections. So the current. I'm going to talk briefly about Carlina Rivera, who is currently very interested in this position. She currently works
to replace Shelley Silver.
To replace Rosie Mendez.
Oh, Rosie Mendez.
Rosie Mendez. We're talking
the city council, right?
We're talking about the city council now.
Yes.
And Rosie Mendez had worked for Margarita Lopez, and Carlina, who has a history of working as a social worker for senior citizens, now works for Rosie, and she's a young woman from the neighborhood. But one of the reasons that I and many other people are very interested in this race is we have a long-standing issue in our neighborhood, and that is the former PS 64,
Right.
which known as
Public School 64,
formerly, and it became known as Charas-El bohio Community Center, and under the auspices of Mayor Giuliani and Council Member Antonio Pagan, it was sold at auction. For I don't remember
and it wasn't because the city needed the money. It was a political
payback
to Giuliani's enemies.
Yeah,
the liberal, from his point of view, the socialist.
Yes, he never forgot our district for voting for Ruth.
Ruth Messinger.
It was payback time, and the thing is that ever since the eviction occurred. Don't ask me what year that was, but it was like about 2000 or 2001. The building has stood empty because it is, I actually have a photocopy of the deed of sale, which says the entire building is for what's called community facility forever, which means it cannot develop luxury housing. And then
but they could make a dormitory, which is equivalent to luxury housing.
Well, that was an attempted in 2004. Greg Singer, who's the owner who bought it, proposed building a 27-story tower, which would, of course, loom over Tompkins Square Park and the neighboring Cristodoro house, which is like about 20 stories high, something like that. And this proposal, because of it was a dormitory, it was considered to be community facility, but it was shot down after a long series of court fights. The building eventually was landmarked. My friend Joey said, "What do you want to landmark that for? It's nothing but an old school." But even then, in 2004, there were 8 other schools that have official designation by the Landmarks Preservation Commission. But the thing is, regarding the city council person has a great deal of say-so. Involving issues of this sort in her district.
Sure.
And so we want to make sure that somebody who's elected, like Carlina, will not cave in. I mean,
well, what's up with PS 64? Singer still owns it.
And the building is empty.
And it can't really be used for anything, but he doesn't want to sell it.
I don't know. Well, he's borrowed a lot of money. He borrowed $11 million from GE Financial in 2000. I think it was 2008 or something like that. You know, he's continued to the property is potentially valuable, but it has so many, the deed restrictions are such that they're very limited.
But there's a personal vindictiveness. I mean, he's mad. He's expressed the fact that he's personally angry at what was done to him and to his investment. And he said, "I'm never going to, I would rather, you know, I won't say it right now.
He's demonstrated.
I would rather see anything else happen, but it fall into the hands of my enemies."
Well, you know, there was an what's called an outstanding demolition order that was considered something of a barrier for being landmarked, but it was landmarked anyway. It shows, like in New York City, you could usually do a deal, and there was a deal, but between Margarita Lopez, a group called East Village Community Coalition, and the Bloomberg administration to rezone the area. But the point is that the building could be developed for some. It had always been used for public purpose, and
that's what the community, they wanted it as a community center, and that's exactly. I mean, if there's been any opposition to anything in the East Village from as long as I've lived there, which is a long time. Brutal, complete, and total opposition to anything that smells of community center or neighborhood gathering point or anything like that.
Well, you know,
there's no way.
The Landmarks Preservation Commission did designate the building, and I'm sure that they knew of the history, but one of the reasons that I'm so interested in the current council who's going to replace Rosie is because I want we've had demonstrations. We had a demonstration a year ago on Three Kings Day down in City Hall. De Blasio came by briefly. But for those of us who live in the neighborhood, it's still the issue. Now,
the idea of towers going around Tompkins Square Park. And last year we had a police tower in the park.
That's correct.
Right? There's a lot of people drooling over this jewel of a park being the centerpiece of a very, very wealthy neighborhood, which is a dream that goes back in developers' fevered imagination to even the 1830s when it was first built, and then all the rich moved out because they had yellow fever epidemics there and typhus epidemics, which we don't have anymore. Well, we do have floods.
We
do have floods. We had a Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy.
It came within about a block of where I live.
Came within a couple blocks of me.
And
friends of mine were flooded.
And the thing is, it's very hard, as I said before, to predict the political who's going to emerge. Like when Rosie ran the first time, I think that was in 2005, and she had something like 8 or 9 opponents. Right. They came out of the woodwork. The New York Times endorsed a man by the name of Gerzabar that nobody ever heard of. But he happened to be the chief of staff for Eva Moskowitz, who was a council member.
Who's behind the whole idea of these schools, charter schools.
The Success Academy.
Yeah.
She's best known for, but we'll just have to see who comes out of the woodwork for this election. And I'm probably leaving out a lot of issues which many people are very concerned about that I'm not particularly conversant in.
How about popping up of these like chain 7-Elevens and other sort of chain bright lit up stores in what was once a very villagey type of neighborhood that's now sort of being turned into like Columbus Avenue or something.
Yeah,
like
well, of course, that's a feature
or
of
a frat boy. It's more like frats.
When a neighborhood becomes prosperous. For instance, there's a former theater. It had been Lowe's Hollywood Theater on Avenue A, but between 6th and 7th Street, and it was a supermarket, and then it was like a Korean bodega or a deli, and it was demolished, and basically it's only 9 stories, but by our standards, it's an apartment tower. That's going to have a Trader Joe's, I was told, not the wine shop, unfortunately, but the groceries of the supermarket.
In numerous states across America, they're both in the same store. Only in New York.
I've lived in other places.
Right, and it's like the blue laws are still the only place that still has the blue laws.
The point is, our neighborhood is rapidly changing. I mean, I've been told that Johnson & Johnson Air had bought a former townhouse on Avenue B, which he's going to turn into like a McMansion.
Oh, lovely. So that's really an attempt to turn the. Is it because of location?
Well, people like the sort of the mystique of the East Village.
Because of the homeless people.
Well,
the rioting.
I'm tempted to call it Brooklyn West.
Yeah.
Because it seems to have the same cachet that would cause Hillary Clinton to put her campaign headquarters in Brooklyn.
Right.
I mean, but
hipster cachet.
But this afternoon I was talking to some
because of you and me. People like you and me suffered and fought and struggled to create the hipster cachet being marketed now.
Well,
by Jared Kushner.
Yeah. Well,
Hi, Jared.
Well, that's sort of the history of New York.
Yeah.
And the Lower East Side has gone through all these phases, and now it's considered to be a place where people want to live, which is actually I wouldn't have lived there if it wasn't a nice place to live. I wasn't.
You just discovered it first. But then the fact is that the minority people who are being the first ones to be driven out. I mean. It's all right for us, middle-class white guys who had all that support and all that privilege to move into a poor neighborhood and feel comfortable.
Well, it was a lower middle-class neighborhood, and I'm talking mostly. I'm going to refer to the area that's west of Avenue B.
Yeah.
Because the area east of Avenue B, the Lower East Side, was characterized by largely, almost exclusively tenements or projects. And that was the area which got largely burned out during the 1970s.
Yeah.
And the area west where there were middle class projects like Village View tended to be maintained over the decades more consistently than others. But the fact of the matter is that most of the people who lived in the area where I currently live, there were a lot of single people, women who worked as paralegals, things of that sort, and lived in the small apartments. It wasn't the hippie paradise that is now being advertised for.
Right. But there were a few places that were actually there only briefly. I mean, there was the East Village Other was there. There was some interesting like used stores, and Abby Hoffman rented a bunch of places
but it was also the place,
put his activist friends into.
It was also a place that La Mama started there.
Yeah.
The Theater for the New City was founded in 1971.
A lot of arts. Yeah, a lot of young artists lived.
You know, the one time the Museum of Modern, the New York Public Library had an exhibition called "From a Hidden Location in the East Village," and this was in the large exhibition room, which the name escapes me momentarily, and it was about the literary history in the 1960s and 70s of our neighborhood. Many of the poets I knew at one time, or even some of them lived in my building, because it had a literary history.
Sure.
And I was recently reading a book.
Amiri Baraka, Leroy Jones, Hetty Jones, his wife.
Of course,
there's so many poets. It's still today.
W.H. Auden.
Right.
Lived for 20 years.
Right around the corner from me, I used to see Ginsberg every day. Walk by to his favorite coffee shop around the.
Yes, that was part of the history. But as I said before, most of the people who actually lived in the apartments were
not those people.
Were not those people. And I read a book recently about W.H. Auden, and who lived for almost, I think, 19 years on St. Mark's Place, near First Avenue. And the author of this book refers to it as a slum. And it wasn't a slum.
Well, they called it Alphabet City, and they made a terrible movie called Alphabet City, which was an attack on the neighborhood.
That was the area below Avenue B.
Alphabet City, A, B, C, D. They would,
and
then of course B and C and D. East of B was always considered the poorest area.
Yeah, well, it lost the population. The figures I've heard may not be correct. But they coincide with what I observed was between about 1970, between 1970 and 1975, there was a loss of 100,000 people who lived in those areas. Because when I first visited the Lower East Side in May of 1966, it was like Calcutta.
It
was just jammed with people, and all the tenements were filled with families. Yeah. And that gradually, it was almost like a light was turned off. It happened very, very quickly, and it took a long time. I've lived in New York for almost 50 years. It'll be 50 years May 17th of this year. And I think that every 5 years there's a recession. I think it's part of the history of New York is to have these financial disasters which affect different segments of the economy.
And there was one that affected the Lower East Side, forced 100,000 people out of the neighborhood.
The one from
the rebuilding of this once funky, cool artist neighborhood with this vast diversity, which Miriam Friedlander told me was precious. Miriam Friedlander, who was then the councilwoman, said the most precious thing was the diversity of this neighborhood. That it really doesn't. At that time, you didn't have the groups working together as much as they seem at each odds.
Of course,
working together so well.
All these diverse people were at each other's throats.
Right, that's true. But in other neighborhoods, it's much more tribal. You have your Asian neighborhood, and you have your Italian neighborhood, and you have your Greek neighborhood. But in our neighborhood, it was everybody was living together, working together, and was united by, I wouldn't say a political social vision that was progressive.
Well, I think it was,
that was decidedly progressive.
It was before the days of political correctness. And I think that people more or less accepted the fact that they were going to be living with people who were different than they were. You know, the area had been Kleine Deutschland.
Yeah, Little Germany.
In the 19th century, and that pretty much disappeared by the first decade, by the First World War.
There was so many, though, I could find in my neighborhood in different areas, so many things that held, that would have been destroyed. Like I was at Mary Help of Christians Church, where Dorothy Day prayed. It was a 100-year-old church. It was ripped down, so another ugly, 6-story
luxury
piece of junk could go up there, so they could feed the 7-Eleven across the street. I mean, what happened to our neighborhood? Is it being turned into another Columbus Avenue, or are we going to ever keep any of the funkiness and the thing that made it special?
It's basically,
or is that just our era?
It's basically a restaurant culture. That is that seems to be in a restaurant economy in this part of Manhattan, and I don't have much contact with the new residents.
Yeah,
even the
I
ones
occasionally do, and some are nice, but they're working a lot of them are working 60-hour weeks.
Yeah, well, that's why I
pay these outrageous rents.
I don't like to make some sweeping generalization. Yeah. I'm perfectly happy to generalize on the basis of one or two acquaintances, but one or two contacts.
Right.
But
I met some very nice people, young people.
Well, the one who lived in your building was working for a bank.
He was at the time he met us, he was working for a oil company. He was on, they sent him to New York. He was doing 60-hour weeks. He came into a party, my birthday party. He met all of us. We said, are you guys?
And he looked me up online.
And he said, you guys are involved in Occupy Wall Street. And we had all these Occupy people there who talked to him for hours. So anyway, I run into him a few weeks ago. He was in New York on a job, and he came by to say hi. You know what he's doing now? He gave up working for the oil company. He moved to Nashville, Tennessee, where he's an entertainment lawyer for the Grand Ole Opry.
You see, I did.
We changed him. We changed him. So we had an effect, right?
It
goes both ways.
It was interesting because he when I talked with him, he'd only been in New York a probably brief time.
Right.
And he was working.
And it had an effect. New York does have an effect on people, doesn't it?
Well, some people hate it.
They can came and change us, but maybe we can change them.
I think that's what people are worried about. They're worried that there's some alternative lifestyle that's a positive lifestyle.
Okay, Philip Van Aver, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Paul.
All right, great. Philip here is an expert on the Lower East Side, expert on New York City politics. There's a lot more. We're going to have you back on because we want you to talk about more of this kind of stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care, and we'll see you next week.